FYI, everyone, we are recording this call so everyone can follow along with us who wasn't able to join us. But welcome. I am so thoroughly excited for all of us to be here together. It looks like we've got over a dozen people here. And I love to start off meetings like this, calls like this, by thinking about where we started. And it was 2012, 2 weeks after my grandpa had passed away. And my grandpa had survived Auschwitz and Mauthausen and spoke to kids all over the world about his story, which is what inspired me to do a lot of this work. And, you know, we started with just a small group of people, 3 or 4 of us. Kate's actually on the line, who was part of that original crew back when we were juniors at Duke. And we made our first Together Remember vigil happen. And it was absolutely incredible. And that was when this whole vision was born, that we could do these vigils all over the world in solidarity with each other in an inclusive way, to transform remembrance into action and to make never again count for not just one group of people, but for all people, and to do that work over years and years and years, because that's what it's going to take. So I'm just super excited that we're all here together. And then in just a few days, we're going to kick off this campaign and make some waves in the world and then go onward from there. So I don't want to monopolize the time here. I want to go ahead and introduce Mac Hamilton and Keel Majewski, who are also helping to lead the campaign, and then we'll dive into our agenda and the rest of the call.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Mac, and I work for STAND, the student-led movement to end mass atrocities. And we've been a partner on Together We Remember for the past couple of years, working on bringing Together We Remember events to our chapters at high schools and universities across the country. So we work a lot with both student activists and educators, really working on the advocacy and education side of things. So for example, I actually got involved when I was in high school, which is now too many years ago. But I was really inspired by my high school government teacher. He actually encouraged me to go to Rwanda for the first time, and you know, kind of set me off on this track learning about genocide and mass atrocities. So I really believe in the power of student activism, the power of educator activism, and really excited to be a partner on this project.
Hey everyone, my name's Keel Majewski. I'm coming to you from Madison, Wisconsin. I'm the executive director of the Carl Wilkins Fellowship, and the whole purpose of the fellowship is to build a grassroots constituency of folks just like the people who are on this call, who are organizing to end and prevent genocide, mass atrocities, and identity-based violence. So we just relaunched after a short hiatus, and rebuilding that network, reactivating our alumni fellows, and I'm really happy to see 2 of my colleagues, Beth and Corey, on the line here. So happy to be with you all and to be partnering with Together We Remember and our longtime partner STAND for the campaign in April, and looking forward to what comes next.
Awesome. Thanks, Keel and Matt. Let's go ahead and dive right in. We've got quite a bit to cover in a little bit of time. So, you know, the aim of our call is simply to connect with each other, to share resources, and to answer any questions that you have about launching the campaign in your community. I don't know what happened automatically to the text here, got out of format. So anyways, we're going to spend a few minutes welcoming everyone, introducing the call, is what we're doing right now. We're going to highlight a couple of stories from some of our vigil organizers so that everyone can get a sense of kind of what's going on around the world. We're going to talk about some of the major planning stages to, you know, really make or break your event. We're going to share some promotional resources and educational tools, talk about advocacy and social media, and then also finally open the floor to Q&A to whatever's on your mind. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So first off, I would love to hear from first Kate in Charlottesville, then Ben in Boca Raton, then Scott with Stay in Canada, and then finally Lauren in Portland. Would love if you guys could just share, you know, your name, what community you represent, and just 1 or 2 lines about the essence of your Together We Remember event.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Keller, and I'm helping to coordinate the Together We Remember event in Charlottesville this year. So as David mentioned, I was part of the first Together We Remember event at Duke, and I now live in Charlottesville, and David had reached out after the white supremacist rally that occurred in Charlottesville last August to see if I'd be interested in helping to organize a TWR vigil here. So what we've been doing and organizing for the event here here is basically building off of the TWR foundation and really customizing it to our context. So we're gathering a group of community leaders to discuss how they can act within their spheres of influence to counter bias and prepare for the 1-year anniversary of the rally in August, since there are a lot of plans for potential events occurring, including potentially a reenactment of last year's rally. So there's a lot that needs to go on in terms of planning and preparing for that. So we're excited to bring these community leaders together from all different sub-communities of Charlottesville, building off of the TWR Foundation.
I was on mute. Ben, why don't you chime in there?
Cool. Hi, my name is Ben Thomas, and I'm an Episcopal priest at St. Gregory's Episcopal Church in Boca Raton, Florida. Downtown, it's David's hometown, I'm told. Saw him last week or the week before, I can't remember, it's been such a blur. But we're holding one outdoors in a park in the middle of downtown, sort of an open space, with what's called BRICA, which is the Boca Raton Interfaith Clergy Association. So we're trying to harness all of the youth directors at major, mosques, synagogues, and churches in the area to mobilize their own youth to sort of lead an interfaith youth-led reading of the names and an event at the end of April. I also studied graduate school the genocide in Rwanda and genocide in general. So I have a huge passion for keeping this in people's memory, and in order to sort of find our way forward together as the world gets complicated and tribal. So, yeah.
Thanks, Ben. I would also add that the event in South Florida is also going to shine a light on the recent shooting at Stoneman Douglas, and we may have some students and teachers that were affected come and speak. So, a lot of what Together Remember is about is taking the idea of building peace and asking, what does peace building look like in our community? And clearly in Boca and in the South Florida community, that's a very relevant topic right now. So that's just something, an extra part of the flavor of the event.
Parkland's part of our community and part of the youth go to Stoneman Douglas, go to our church. And so, Never Again is sort of, trending again, or trending possibly for the first time in social media circles. And so having studied genocide, the Never Again means something, different. So we're trying to bridge that gap in this event to talk about how is Never Again sort of being broadened, and what does that mean? So, yeah.
Scott and Lauren, if y'all could go super quick, I think we're pressed on time, would be really awesome to still hear your voices.
Okay. Well, I am in the middle of a common area, so if dance music starts playing, I do apologize.
You have to dance, though.
So I'm Scott Fenwick, Executive Director of STAN Canada. As a location reference point, I live about 5.5 hours north of the Montana border. So what we're going to be doing for Together We Remember is essentially an online version, specifically on Twitter for this project. So we're going to be tweeting the names of genocide victims sometime in mid-April for 24 hours. So we're going to have set intervals and have it all pre-programmed. And from talking with David, the hope is to essentially run this as a trial for future years and other organizations to try this around the world, basically.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if we had different organizations every day taking different hours of the day using their Twitter accounts to kind of fill out the entire month. I mean, it would just, that would bring the internet, hopefully. So that's the idea. Lauren, you're next.
Hi, I'm Lauren Fortgang. I'm with the Never Again Coalition, and we are based in Portland, Oregon. This year, we are doing a premiere of a short documentary that we made where we filmed 4 Holocaust survivors, but we had students pose questions to them, asking them what they think people should do now to first recognize things that they recognized early on during the Holocaust, but also to stand up against persecution. And it's kind of, it's pretty broad. So it leaves a lot, it leaves a lot for conversation afterwards, where it really can be interpreted into situations that students over a different time might be happening to them. So it's also going to be up for grabs if anyone wants to use it. It's for public use once it's premiered on April 10th. Afterwards, we're going to do Together We Remember, just short, paper that people can write reflections on, and those are going to be displayed at the Oregon Jewish Museum and Center for Holocaust Education afterwards.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. So the reason why I wanted to do this is just to highlight how different you take 4 or 5 folks and just how different all of our Together Remember vigils are going to look, right? These are not your average vigils. When you say a vigil, folks have a very specific idea. And so we're totally turning that idea on its head and really making it work for our own communities. And that's why I'm just so excited, because I get to see on social media when you share with the hashtag all the amazing things that you're doing. And then when we combine that, it's going to be absolutely beautiful to see how we've all done this. So, one other thing that I want to mention on this slide is a call to action. So if you have yet to join the Together We Remember Community Hub on Facebook, if you click that link, you'll be able to access it and request to join, and then I'll let you in there. And that's where these conversations can continue. If you have other questions that come up, ideas, or you want to brainstorm or share other resources, articles that are coming up that are relevant, that's the spot to do it. So I just want to make sure that everyone has that on their radar so we can hear more about what your events are looking like. Feel free to post in there as you introduce yourself. All right.
I just want to
moving on.
Post that in the chat box because you can't click links on the GoToMeeting presentation.
Fair. Thank you. Great. Okay, so I got lost here. I'm back. Okay, so what I want to do really quick in the next few minutes is just kind of locate ourselves where we are in the planning process. Everyone is in a bit of a different part of the planning process. So over the years, we've developed these 8 stages that most communities tend to go through. Number 1, getting connected. 2, building your team. 3, designing your event. 4, creating a budget and recruiting sponsors. 5, arranging event logistics. 6, promote your event. 7, finalize your event details. And 8, follow up. So we're going to focus on 3 through 6. Right around now, everyone should kind of be in these 3 to 6 areas and hopefully turning the corner on 5 and 6. Don't worry if you're not. I've been at 1 or 2 well into April, and actually one of our communities, Agnes Scott College, which is organizing a great vigil this year, they planned their event the day before. It's absolutely incredible. So have no fear, but we're going to dive in here. All right, so design. What we found is that our most powerful vigils tend to have 6 principles in mind. 1, it's convening local leaders. So what would it look like to bring together unlikely allies to be a part of this process? When folks look around the room and say, wow, how did they get all these people across these different identity groups here and together? Think about how often that happens in your community, if at all. So that's really number 1. Number 2, shifting from fear to courage. All of us have certain biases and historical experiences, and we all come with some sort of reluctance sometimes to engage. And so the idea is, how could we use performing artists and inspirational speakers to kind of not disarm, but just to open our hearts and our minds to new possibilities at these events. Then once you have an open heart and open mind, then you could actually learn and engage in conversation. So that's number 3, learning and dialogue. The idea being, what would it look like for everyone who comes, including the speakers and performers, to come away having learned something new about the past, something new about what they can do in the present. Number 4, building a sustainable coalition. So how can we use the program, whether it's the name reading or other sorts of creative engagement, to ensure that everyone has a sense of kinship after leaving the event? So I'm sure you guys have been on trips before, you didn't know anyone, and then at the end of it, everyone feels like they're, part of a family. It's really powerful. We could do some things even in just an hour or 2 so that everyone feels like they identify with one another through this program across or transcending race and religion and politics. In some communities, it's more important than others, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. 5, committing to act. So how do we, first off, encourage folks to practice taking action at our event itself, but then also leave with some momentum and with some sort of individualized, like, here's how I can take this work and bring it to my community moving forward long term. And then 6, going public. So have you share your experience via local media and social media, and encouraging members of your community to be part of that process of making, of demonstrating what their community can be at its best. guests. So that can happen on social media. It could happen by inviting a couple of other things. So think about those design goals on the left here. And then you have your design elements, right? The tools that you get to work with. So number one, having a space to gather, unless you're doing that on Twitter, but I guess Twitter is your space. 2, interactive programming, which we can get into more later. 3, some sort of call to action. And 4, social media. So combining those design goals with those design elements allow us to remember together in a way that's relevant, meaningful, and sustainable for our communities. There's a link there on the bottom to visit the Organizer's Guide for further wisdom. The Organizer's Guide is literally the collection of the last 5 or 6 years of wisdom from all of our organizers over the years. If something's gone wrong, it's probably happened to us. Rain, forgetting a power cord, whatever it is. So all of that is mentioned in the guide, things to check out. All right, so number 4 about the budget. The real quick takeaway here is that 1, there's a budget template in all of your Google folders specific to your communities that you can fill out should you wish to request funds from us. We have some small amounts of funding for your events. We just need to have your budget requests by this Friday at 12 p.m. And then we can have further conversation about that. So that's all that there is on the budget discussion. There's a bunch of line items in these budget templates. It's just kind of like the full universe of possibilities. Delete whatever is not relevant. Excuse me. Add whatever you need. But I should also note that if you have local sources of funding, obviously that's wonderful to tap into first. Consider us as like the last resort, but we are here for you should it be needed. Number 5, looking at logistics. So. We have a planning checklist that's also in the same file as you'll find your budget template. And it has the 8 stages and usually the high level steps that you'll want to check off. And feel free, if you're collaborating with a variety of people on a team, to kind of divide and assign ownership and track the status of that. This is my consultant showing here, but we found that some communities that use this have found it really helpful. So totally optional, but want to make sure that you know this is available to you as well. Yeah. Okay, number 6 on promotion. So consider our 3-step approach. Number 1, marketing your event to VIPs first and foremost, right? Those are the folks that have, the most urgent calendars and they like to fill them out well in advance. Also, by engaging VIPs, you can then use that as part of your marketing. So let's say you found out the mayor of your town is going to come and participate. Then as you market, you could say featuring the mayor or, someone who's a local celebrity or a performing artist, things like that. So that's why it's helpful to go for the VIPs. You can also empower the VIPs to do the marketing for you, right? So they have networks and they can help reach out and recruit other people to come to the events as well. So that's worked out really well for us over the years. And then I have stars next to 2 and 3 because not all vigils are going to be entirely open to the public and open to media. For example, in Charlottesville, ours is going to be an invite-only event to kind of just keep things, not too crazy, given how sensitive the community is right now. But for those who are doing a more open and public event, you would then want to open it up and market it to the general public, and of course also invite local media to come and cover the event as well. And we have a variety of promotion resources, as you can see. When you pop open the actual link to the presentation, which we'll resend out after the call, all of these are active and you could click on them. But these all link to one overall promotion resources folder. There's a lot of stuff in here. It might seem overwhelming, but we feel like it's better for you guys to have it and explore at your own leisure and then adapt it to meet your own needs. So we have an invite list template where you can track all the VIPs that you want to invite and what the status is of that. We have templates for marketing, like flyers for the event, which you're welcome to use and adapt. Our logos, which you can include as well. We trust you on that, so be careful with it, please. An event overview template where if you were to share, what's the essence of your event, it'll all be captured in this one-pager document. An email invite template, a press release template. Our promo video is available to you guys as well. We're going to be uploading that to Facebook and to other platforms, but right now it's available on YouTube. There's no photos in the folder there at that link that you see, but I'm going to add them later on tonight after the call. I ran out of time today, but those are photos from events in past years that you can incorporate into whatever marketing materials that you may need. Or if someone doesn't believe that we've done it before, you'll have evidence. So that covers promotion. jumping now to education tools, I am going to turn it over to Keel.
All right, thank you, David. So we have gotten requests over the years from teachers, students, and other community organizers for some educational materials that are more designed for TWR vigil style purposes. And what we found out is that there's a ton of great material out there from our friends and partners like USC Shoah Foundation, US Holocaust Memorial Museum, so many good institutions with tons of material. The big problem is how do you distill that and make it something that can be usable for our vigil organizers. So that's what we've been working on here. You can see on this slide, you can click directly on where it says profiles and conflict summaries, and what you'll see is a couple works in progress. So to go along with names and the name reading aspect of a lot of the vigils, we also have some profiles that just briefly give a glimpse of somebody who maybe was murdered during a genocide or mass atrocity, or someone who survived, and also folks who could be identified as protectors who took extraordinary steps, risked their lives in many cases to help people. And this is a big thing of what we want to accentuate through this, is that it's not just about the horrible things that happen to people, it's about the amazing, courageous things that people did to protect others. So there's a look into that on the profiles. We'll be adding more as we go along here. I think we've got 10 or 11 to start out with. And then on the second side of that slide, you'll see conflict summaries. And again, this is a situation where there's tons of great material out there about Cambodia and Rwanda, Syria, Sudan, different historical and ongoing cases of genocide, mass atrocities, and identity-based violence. But we are making an effort there to digest that material, curate it, and whittle it down to a few paragraphs, so one page per conflict. And we're adding more there as we go along. And you can see at the beginning of that document some of our rationale about the different cases we recognize so far and what we're currently researching. So a big point to highlight about these two things is they are works in progress, and we would love to invite our TWR and stand-in CWF communities to participate in this with us. If this is a way you would like to contribute by doing research, supplying names, writing stories, and backgrounds of conflicts. So there's information there about how you can get involved with that if you go into those documents. So David, do you want to go to the next slide, please? Great. And we also have other material in the educational folder. These are all hyperlinks. So if you're in that Google slide presentation, just come find materials are. I know Corey Williams in Arizona has had trouble with the Wi-Fi where they do their vigils. So we have hard copy versions of names that you can print out, in addition to the name reading app, which will work on a smartphone, tablet, or computer. We've also got a mini database forming of quotes, poetry, songs, artistic material you can incorporate into your vigil, and a couple films. Lauren was on the phone earlier. Never Again Coalition is graciously allowing us to use that in these events, and also have the opportunity to do a interesting film screening from India with Love, which is a group of folks in the United States who've been affected by violence, who go to India to learn about nonviolence and the tradition of Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi. So pretty compelling 45-minute film. If you're interested in any of those materials, or if there's something there that you would, or something that's not there that you would like to see or that would be useful to us, to you, please just email us, because we have a lot more material at our fingertips that we just haven't had the capacity to upload onto websites and that sort of thing. So please, this is all for you, and we want to be helpful to you. So please keep the feedback coming on what materials are good for you.
Cool. I could take this one, Keel, and then you could pick up after this one. Is that cool?
Yep.
Awesome. Cool. So we're now going to turn to social media, and this whole concept of a virtual living memorial is something that we began to experiment with last year, but has always been part of the vision of Together We Remember. And what this is essentially all of our communities are going to contribute with the Together Remember hashtag on different social media platforms. And then we're going to be able to gather all of that in what's called a social stream on our website. And it's going to show all the different images and videos from around the world, showing how we're all transforming remembrance into action. And why I'm so excited about this is, imagine years and years from now, our kids and grandkids are going to be able to look back and see that this is what we did to make Never Again a reality. And hopefully by the time they're looking at it, Never Again will be a reality, and they're simply going to uphold that reality. Or if the work has there's still work to do, they'll continue it. And every year we're going to kind of make a time capsule showing the progress that we're making. And so the virtual memorial, simply you could go to that link over there. It's on the website, and it has an active display of the names, just like you would see in the name reading app. So for all these folks who don't have a final resting place, they do have a resting place in a way on our website, which is really special. And then there's survivor testimonies in video form, as well as upstander testimonies. And there are the social media posts, as I mentioned. We also have a Spotify playlist that's really just the beginning of an idea. You know, music very much powers movements, as I'm sure y'all know. So we'd love if you have ideas for music and songs that we could add to it. By all means, you're able to submit those there. And then also we have a blog that if anyone feels called to contribute to throughout the month and after, we'd love for that to happen as well. So just want to give you the heads up there. And now I'll turn it back over to Keel to actually talk about some more specifics around this.
Yeah, I'm just going to run through the highlights of what you can do on social media. There's a lot to this, and you've got a little bit of time before your events. And the point is that it will make sense and pay off for our organizers to spend a little bit of time thinking and planning about how you're going to incorporate social media into your event. And as David just referred to, this is a huge part of the campaign because this is really an opportunity to multiply our collective impact. And at a time when so much of our spaces, both online and in person, are polarized, this is a really important opportunity to change the narrative and demonstrate a new narrative of peace, inclusion, and remembrance to transform that into action. So I've got it divided into 3 sections here. 1 to 4 weeks before your event, you want to be thinking about, you'll be doing your promotions. On the next slide, we'll look at planning our social media strategy, but you're also going to want to visit the event site, because if you plan to live stream or do other things, you might need to set up near an electrical outlet, for example, because you might need to charge your phone. Or there might be different lighting arrangements which could affect how it appears when you're live streaming. So as you get closer to the day of your event, then you might want to consider getting there up to an hour early to make sure you set up and get your spot. And then the big part of it will be broadcasting compelling segments of your event. So if you're the organizer and you're aware of what's going to be happening, you'll probably have a pretty good sense of what are the most poignant moments, whether it's somebody reading names or a speaker or a performance or something like that. There's no pressure to live stream the entire day. Capture anything. Anything is better than nothing. But then the next step of that will be to document your impact. And that includes using the Together We Remember statement template, which is linked on the next page, to write out why this is important to you and to give your participants the opportunity to write out why this is important to them. You can record videos of your participants reading those statements. You can also take photos and share those on Instagram or wherever is your preferred platform. And then the day after your event here, it doesn't have to literally be the day after, but the sooner the better, because then, for me, it's always so much harder to share photos and stuff like that the farther out from an event you get. So immediately after your event, that's the time to share more content, whatever you didn't live stream, whatever you weren't able to get online, do that as soon as you can after your event. And also share the love. Send your participants and your audience members a thank you. Let them know what are some of the next steps after April. And that's something that we're working on to provide that menu of opportunities, whether it's continuing by establishing a stand chapter or working with the Carl Wilkins Fellowship to do some programming after April. We'll have some options for you to keep that momentum going. And an important note there is to make sure you use the Together We Remember hashtag so that we can track all these things, consolidate them, and that they will appear in the virtual memorial. I've got a link at the bottom of this slide that has essentially what I just talked about in one-page format. And you can, it's also got our social media handles on there too, so you know how to tag us. Okay, so next slide, David.
Did the presentation get messed up? I think so. It bumped me to slide 1 now. 1 second.
It's a good looking slide.
You gotta have a placeholder slide. For some reason, the internet is being very slow. While we're waiting for this to reload really quick, what was I going to say? I wanted to remind folks that not everyone's event is happening at the same time of this month. So imagine you've had, I know, like, for example, John Carroll High School is doing their event on the 12th of April. Think about how maybe the students can kind of stay in the loop on what's going on around the rest of the world. We have events almost every day of the month, just about. So there'll be opportunity to kind of check in and see how other folks are responding to what you've shared online. So the campaign will still be going, is what I'm saying. Where were we?
Slide 14, please.
Thank you. Okay. Back to you.
There we go. Okay, so 4 big options. We realize that as event organizers, you may not be there for the entire day and you may not have capacity to do all of this. That's totally cool. There's no pressure to do all of this. We'd love for you to do as much of it as you can, and I think you'll find that if you just experiment with some of these options, they will be easier than you think they might be. But we're developing just a walkthrough of how to live stream. I think that Twitter is probably going to be the best platform for us, but if Facebook or Instagram is good for you all, then please use whatever you're most comfortable with, and we'll make it work. So number 2 would be posting the photos and videos of your Together We Remember statements. Instagram is a great platform for that. Twitter is also good. But again, whatever works best for you. We know that given there are a lot of high school and college students participating, and I mean, hey, I'm a little older, but I still use Snapchat too, so we could think about creating a geo-filter and a Snap story for your school or community. And then we'll get into number 4 here a little bit during Mac's section, but an important way to channel the remembrance activities into action is to use these photos, use these videos you take, and tweet them at your elected officials. So I think Mac is going to share a little bit more about how specifically we can organize the advocacy asks. So I'll turn it over to Mac.
Yes, so apologies in advance for anyone who is not US based, because these are very specifically US advocacy issues. So Scott, you can feel free to tune out. But so the main advocacy point that we will be pushing on throughout April is the Elie Wiesel Genocide and Atrocities Prevention Act. And so, as you know, one of our core principles at Together We Remember is remembering the past in order to create a brighter future. And so that's exactly what we're intending to do by advocating for this piece of legislation. So I don't need to tell all of you about all of the issues in the world, but right now we're facing the largest humanitarian crisis since World War II. We have the highest number of refugees ever in recorded human history, and we're at a 25-year peak in violent conflict. And in the past 15 years, half of the world's population has been exposed to political violence. So really, really staggering numbers, and the human toll is absolutely devastating. So this piece of legislation seeks to help alleviate this by improving U.S. government functions in terms of atrocity prevention. So the 3 main provisions of the bill are that it supports the existing Atrocities Prevention Board, which basically brings together officials from all across U.S. agencies, so Department of Defense, the State Department, USAID, the Treasury, the Office of the Vice President, you name it, they're all represented on this board in order to form a whole of government approach to atrocity prevention. So we heard during the Rwanda genocide that, while the State Department was monitoring things, while Defense was monitoring things, USAID was as well, no one even knew each other between those agencies. So this is an effort to make sure that those communities come together to discuss countries and regions that are at risk of genocide and mass atrocities, so that we're not acting when it's too late to really make a difference. The next thing that it does is that it mandates atrocity prevention training for foreign service officers. So of course, those are our folks on the ground who really understand context in all of these countries. They work for embassies, but they're also on the ground talking to people every day. Unfortunately, in the past, these officers haven't had specific training to identify what the warning signs could be. And so it's vital that that's included in their training before they're deployed to whatever countries they're going to. And then the last thing that it does is that it institutionalizes a fund called the Complex Crises Fund. This is actually the only fund of its kind. As you'll know from watching all of the drama around the US budget, we budget on a yearly basis. And so that is the same for embassies around the world. So we give specific amounts of funding to different countries. But that means when a crisis is emerging, we don't always have emergency funds in order to put towards peace building efforts, to give to local actors who know what they can do to help de-escalate situations. So the Complex Crises Fund is housed at USAID, the development agency, which does most of peace building work in countries around the world. And it's just a side fund that is able to be used between funding cycles when an emergency does rise. And it's been used really successfully in several different cases, including in Jordan, in the Central African Republic, and in Burundi. And I'm happy to kind of get in the weeds on that with anyone who's interested in it. So in terms of the legislation, we have both a House and a Senate bill, and for each of your communities based on your state and then the different congressional districts that are in your area, we've developed a list of targets for you. Sorry, could you go back, David? So the House bill has 84 co-sponsors. Both bills are bipartisan, although they're both lopsided Democrats. So we are really trying to recruit Republicans onto both bills. The House resolution, if I recall, has about 20 Republicans, and then I guess that makes it about 64 Democrats on it. So if you have a representative in your area who's a Republican, I would highly encourage that they be a top target for you. We really think that this resolution can pass this year, at least in the House, and you'll help build that momentum. And then on the Senate side, we have 32 co-sponsors across the aisle. But again, it's heavily lopsided. I believe there's 5 Republicans on it, as well as Angus King, who is an independent, and then all the rest are Democrats. So we're really trying to recruit Republicans, especially Republicans who are on the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee, who can help really push it through committee for us. You can move on to the next slide. So there's a lot of different ways that you can implement advocacy into your event, and we've tried to make it as easy as possible for you. So the first thing is collecting signatures, and in your community resources, there's an advocacy section, and we have a template for collecting signatures. Basically, you'll just ask for the name, the email, and then the physical address of the person, just so that congressional offices can be sure that they're in their district. And then you can scan those and send them to us, and then we'll deliver them right on Capitol Hill for you. The second thing that you can do is host a call-in day. And so we'd really encourage you to do that during your event. You can announce it at different points during your event or name reading. You can even hop on the phone and show people how it's done while you're on the microphone, which is really cool. And we'll also have little scripts that you can hand out to make it as easy as possible for people to take that action. And we really find that oftentimes people are really nervous to call Congress, but once they've done it once, it encourages them to do it again and again because they realize it's just an intern, it's just a staff member who's picking up the phone. And so we're just trying to get people to take that first action so that they can continue to take action for years to come. And then the third thing you can potentially do is engage on social media. So something that a lot of STAND students are doing is they're writing their message about why they remember or who they remember on a Post-it note, and then they're going to be taking a picture and tweeting it right at their elected officials. And so Twitter is actually a really wonderful tool for activism because you get right in the ear of the communications staff of that office immediately. And so if they see, they don't really get calls about genocide and mass atrocities all that often. It can take as few as like 15 or 20 tweets, especially in smaller states, with smaller populations in order to really make a difference. And that's the same with call-ins. So encourage you to talk to your teams, see what people are excited about, but hopefully implement one or more of these potential advocacy asks into your event. And I'm at your disposal. I am happy to help you target things specifically to your community to see what works best. Also in the advocacy folder, there is a document that says Together We Remember target list. And so for each of your communities, I've gone through and put who the most pertinent either senator or representative is based on whether someone has already co-sponsored the legislation or not. So yes, be in touch if I can be helpful, and really excited to turn remembrance into action with you all.
Awesome. Mac is a pro at this, and I still am learning so much all the time. For example, that target list that Mac has created, I've never seen anything like it. And so it's a great learning tool for students and for adults as well. So democracy at its best. Thank you, Mac. I know we're running up on time, so we're going to breeze through our last slide or two, and we'll ask that if folks can have to jump, awesome. If you can stick around, we'll stay on for another 10-15 minutes to answer questions. So really quick, the second advocacy option that we have in the US, but also internationally, is trying to pass a resolution recognizing April as Genocide Awareness and Prevention Month. So there was a time before Black History Month was known as Black History Month. We are currently at that stage, but about to bring it to the popular awareness. And there have been about 5 or 6 states in the governor's office that have already passed resolutions like this. So what we simply did was we took that template and we took out the name of the state where that happened, and you have it available to you, and it's ready where you can engage, let's say, your mayor or city council and try to pass that resolution. Or if you have a student government, you could also pass a resolution within your your school community as well. But ideally, we'd love to encourage you to find an elected representative who can kind of put their stamp of approval on this, and then it provides an annual ritual every single year, a vehicle that we can come back to say, okay, well, now what are we doing to honor Genocide Awareness and Prevention Month? In addition to Together We Remember, what else can we be doing? What else should we be doing? So really quick, wanted to touch on that, and happy to answer any questions that you have around that later on. Now we're on to Q&A. So for anyone who has to drop, it was amazing to have you on the line to hear your voices. But for those who could stick around, we are all yours now.
Hi, this is Kate. Mac, I had a question for you. Where can we find that target list that you mentioned?
Yes. David, can you pull up the folders just to show people where all of these documents live?
Yeah, give me a second.
Yeah, sure. I feel like it'll help to see it on screen share. But I believe all of you have access to the Together We Remember community resources folder. And so in that folder, I believe there is an advocacy folder, and the target list is right in there, in addition to a one-pager on the legislation, the petition mechanism, and one other thing in there. And we'll also throw in a call-in script once my incredible graphic design student throws it together.
Okay, so it's really hard to see. Let me see if I could blow this up a bunch more. So the folder that we shared is called TWR Toolkit, Global Resources, and there's 3 folders in there: Advocacy Resources, Education Resources, and Promotion Resources, which we went through today. And if we jump into the Advocacy folder, I'll blow this up even more. You should be able to see all the resources that are available in there to you. And we'll continue to add more over time as we get into April as well.
Great. So is that petition template what you'll want us to gather signatures on?
Yes, that would be great. We also should have a digital way to do that if you prefer to collect them by laptop at your event, and we can send that link along once it's up.
Thank you.
And Kate, I just dropped that link into the chat box, by the way, in case you want to grab it real quick.
So I'm gonna have to, David, I'm gonna have to peace out. But Kate, if you can keep me up to date on the Charlottesville event and who's RSVP, then we can take some next steps to organizing that.
Sure, I'll leave that to Kate to lead the charge on, but happy to.
Okay, it was so great to meet you guys, and thank you for all the wonderful work that you're doing, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.
Any other questions, folks?
I have a question.
Go ahead. Who is this?
This is Allison Rogers.
Hi.
I am not really sure you're the person to ask this, but I've been having a lot of problems convincing student activities to work with me on anything. And I'm wondering if anyone on the line has dealt with something similar, and if so, what they recommend doing.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question because I once was a student, and there was a time that Kate and I and a few others had to figure out how to get this on the agenda and make an event happen. There are 2 ways primarily to go about it. There's like the folks are your friends and they go along with you, and there's sort of like the event in protest version where you kind of do something anyways, right? We're talking about gathering in an open space in your community or in a not so open space with just several folks or a number of folks, and you can kind of organize something regardless of whether or not you're getting administrative support. This event is branded in the sort of way that, like, if someone's saying no to an event to remember victims of genocide, mass atrocities, and hatred, they don't look awesome. So if you can frame your ask in a way that's not directly telling them that they're being mean, it's helpful, and you can rely on perhaps like showcasing how we're doing other events around the world and in other similar communities, from Duke to other schools that have like high profiles. There's the video that you could share. But also what I would recommend is to work through existing organizations. So if you're going about this as an individual, it could be pretty tough. But if you have the backing of other student organizations that have similar values, and whether it's like, let's say, the Hillel on campus or an intercultural organization, if you could approach them and see if any one or several of those organizations would be interested in joining you and sponsoring the event, you might have a much easier time getting the necessary approvals. You also could focus, if you have a class that's focused mostly on genocide or addressing social justice, you can invite your class to turn your classroom into a vigil. And then you only have to convince one teacher. So there's a variety of options, and I'm happy to talk to you more one-on-one about making that happen. Is that helpful?
Yes, and I probably will call both you and Mac again in the next couple weeks. So as I try to get everything together.
That's what
that's awesome. Yeah. And I think you're at Baylor, right? So that's in Texas, which is obviously a great, area for us to do advocacy work.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, and there will be folks that kind of put up obstacles and barriers. And I think it's a great point to kind of closing out somewhat with this is, there are going to be folks that don't totally get it at first. There are going to be roadblocks, but you know, I really encourage folks to push through, and even if the event is really small, really simple, even if it's just you standing somewhere in the middle of your campus and reading names out loud using the app, I like to say that the event is not just for the living, but also those who've passed. And so, you know, in that sense, in a spiritual sense, to me, that has a lot of value and it's pretty special. So, you know, to me, that counts as a vigil, even a vigil of one.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, folks?
Hi, David. This is Kathy. I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
We were thinking of, do you have anything organized for like next steps? Do you, after you have the vigil and we name the names and we have people and we want to gear up and do something, say every year, and make another dimension of it for maybe the next time? What, like,
yeah, no, where do we go from here?
Together, or what, you know, what other things have other people done that maybe you could put in your Google Drive and let us just view?
Yeah, totally. Keel, do you want to take this question by chance? And then I can chime in after.
Yeah, wow. That's so, Kathy, what's your community?
It's the John Carroll School.
Oh, right. Kathy that we spoke to just yesterday. So yeah, that's essentially my organization, the Carl Wilkins Fellowship. We're working with a lot of partners right now, and it's to both rebuild the genocide prevention constituency that existed in the Save Darfur days about 10 or 11 years ago, but also to address rising extremism and polarization and deterioration of civil discourse in the U.S. And it's not a you know, Republican or Democrat thing. It's how do we transcend all that and agree to speak civilly to each other. So we're developing some programming around that right now, and we have some interventions in mind that include you know, some best practices about forming coffee groups, for example, with local leaders and stakeholders, police chief, mayor, or principals, or you know, folks who have some influence. Get them to develop relationships and know each other, not with an agenda. Like, you're not getting together for coffee, you know, to talk about political issues. You're developing social relationships, because it's been demonstrated that when these leaders across the, you know, political and religious and racial fault lines in communities have those relationships, when the tensions rise, then they're much more effective at acting together as a powerful break to slow down some of that tension and neutralize it. So we've got a lot of those different interventions in mind. What we want to do immediately after your event is to basically do a focus group with some of the folks who came to the event and organize the event, and say, you know, what assets do you have going forward that you would like to take advantage of, and then we would help you implement programming there. So our hope is that by the end of the summer, we can have some specific programs and structures to offer for you. But there are also more traditional, I can't say traditional, I mean like existing, like nicely structured examples, like forming a stand chapter, you know, in MAC. That's one of our big goals at high schools and universities, is to translate this energy into a sustainable structure like a stand chapter that can do that year-round programming.
Mm-hmm. All right, good, thank you.
And we can talk more about that. And I would also just add that I think there are next steps that we want to involve there's 3 different groups, I would say. 1, the students at your school, student leaders, and 2, the teachers and the faculty at the school, and then 3, members of the community in the surrounding area, right? You know, this event, specifically yours, is involving all 3 of those different types. How can we use John Carroll as sort of the hub of a lot of that engagement? And so the vigil is an example of that, but it's just one. So there's a lot more that we can talk about offline about, you know, and brainstorm further about it. Happy to talk about it when I'm actually there on the 12th as well.
That's good. We look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, I'm excited to join. It's going to be a busy day. I start there and then I fly over to Charleston for another event. So
that's not a bad ending.
No, it's amazing. Any other questions, folks?
Thank you so much for this. This has been great. We look forward to getting access to the Google Drive Do you want us to send you our Google addresses or?
We can email out all the necessary links, and also if you open up the regular version of the presentation, I sent out over email the link to the presentation. You should be able to click on a lot of the links. They're all kind of you could view them and adapt things right then and there. If you have trouble accessing anything or finding anything, just shoot me a note and we'll make sure you have everything as well. Or if you have trouble like copy and pasting something specifically for your needs, we can set up a special document for you.
I'm dropping a link to it right in the chat box right now.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone. This was incredible and very validating, inspiring, energizing. And you know, it's March 27th, so we've got a couple of days till it's game time. And then, you know, onward. So by all means, please engage with us in the community hub on Facebook, but also we're just an email or a phone call away. Reach out anytime you have any questions or concerns, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Great to talk to you all.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. See you.
And David, I can give you a brief update now that
Yeah, sure.
I'm between music songs.